You're listening to XSgaming Podcast, a podcast for gamers by gamers, with your hosts Xander, Skullion, and James Gruesome, bringing you something old, something new, and a little bit of nostalgia too.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome back to another exciting episode of XSgaming Podcast. This is episode 125. We're recording this on the 11th of November. I'm one of your hosts, Xander Skullion, and joining with me is my wonderful co-host, Mr. James Gruesome. What's up, James?
What's up, everybody? Sending out a happy post-Halloween, a happy pre-Thanksgiving, and a happy Veterans Day out there to everyone. I know a lot of us have a lot of friends that, have served and, are out. Our friend John, the Retro Bro, my brother EJ, actually who both served in the Navy, which is pretty crazy. And, just a shout out to all of them, Jared, everybody that ever served, and did your time there and got out. Any of those that are still doing it right now, it's like we really appreciate it. It's awesome you guys did what you do, and I hope everybody's having a wonderful day.
Indeed, indeed. And, this is going to be a really interesting episode because of the timing, because we're not going to record next week. And it's going to be getting close to Thanksgiving. So this is kind of like a Thanksgiving episode as well. So with that being said, I wanted to start the show off with a bang and talk about Black Friday. Because it's funny. I went to blackfriday.com to look at some of the sales. And the first thing that comes up is video games. Because there's no doubt that video games are like the highest thing in the holiday season. And there's actually some pretty good deals. One of them that I saw that was shared on the XSgaming group page, and I already knew about it, was GameStop has this deal for like $200, like $199. You get a 1 terabyte slim PS4 and Spider-Man. Now, this is a doorbuster sale, so this is going to be something you have to go right when the door opens and have, all your training done for all your wrestling moves and all that crap, because it's going to be insane. But
get your stiff arms ready to block people.
Yeah, because this is a really good deal, though. What'd you think about it, James?
Dude, is it $200?
Yeah, $199.
Yeah, that's actually like really awesome. I heard somebody at work talking about that. I heard them mentioning that was like the one thing they wanted to go out and get. I was also talking to another coworker because, a lot of us, we just kind of end up being the game person at work. That sometimes I work with people that are, sometimes 10 years or more so older than me, or they're looking for something for their kids. And sometimes they end up coming to me and asking about stuff, which sometimes I don't even know about, like headphones for PCs. I was like, I had to ask somebody else about that. I had to ask our friend Gabe about that one. I was like, dude, I don't know anything about headsets. But
I get the same thing. I get some customers at one of my jobs, and his son is like a teenager, and he like one day he came in and I was selling him some stuff, and he was like, Xander, like you know about video games. What's like the hottest video game out right now? Like what's the game that all the kids are playing? And I'm just kind of like, well, I know Red Dead Redemption 2 is like hot as hell, which we'll get into in the show. And like he was talking about some game called like Roblox or something like that. I've heard of it. It's like almost like Minecraft sort of thing. And I was like, dude, I don't know anything about that. I mean, I don't play that.
Yeah, there's always going to be those things that some of us just don't know about as far as what kids are playing nowadays. And I was trying to help another guy about the right type of PlayStation to get. He said he was just going to get one. He was asking, if he should get a Switch or a PlayStation. But like, I know he likes a lot of sports games, and he was looking, I think, for a more like multimedia thing, that had everything on it. So I was like, dude, you probably definitely want to get the PlayStation. But then I'm talking about regulars and PS Pros, and I probably just ended up kind of confusing them a bit, But at least I did try to help. But I mean, at the end, like that is a really great deal. Spider-Man, definitely a very popular game. Everybody's really loved playing, and it's cool just to get a nice little bundle like that. I mean, I'd rather pay more money not to go out in that, but hey, I know how things are, and sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, and I mean they have some sales as well. Like the Xbox One S is $189.99. I mean you're saving $90 right there off the bat. And again, that's another door open sale Thursday, November 23rd at 4 p.m. Which I'm not a big fan of it because I think that's technically on Thanksgiving. It's like, dude, like, let people enjoy their families. Like, I've worked retail for a long time, and I understand how things are, but I'm just not a big fan of Thanksgiving, Black Friday bleed through. Like, I think it should just be let them enjoy some turkey and gravy, you know?
Yeah, leave it the next day. It's like, that's the thing. So many stores, though, now it's like they feel the need. They have to, compete with online sales and to make sure. So they want to start the sales as early as possible. But sometimes I think, that can, like, turn off some people to it more because people miss out with time, with family on that day when, a lot of us have had jobs where we had to work on holidays. It's like it happens, but it's like, still kind of sucks, but it's like, yeah, Black Friday used to just be Friday. Now it's like Thursday and Friday. Now we have Black Mondays, and everything is just crazy. But there are lots of deals, and I also like to check the lots of Dollar Generals, stores like that. That's where I found a lot of good deals on some of the little, if you like those little all-in-one consoles, like the the Commodores, Atari Flashbacks, and the little portable Genesises and such. Those are really good places to check too, which tend to be like not as crazy as Walmart's and Best Buys and stores like that. It can be a little bit more laid back, and you can still find some really neat items there too.
Yeah, and I mean, there's some other deals. I was mentioning earlier about the 1 terabyte slim PS4 with Spider-Man. Well, they had the same deal for $199, but it comes with a $50 GameStop gift card, which is pretty awesome. I mean, you're getting a great deal. You're saving $100 on a PlayStation 4 Slim 1 terabyte, and they're giving you $50 to buy a brand new game. Now, if you're into the Pro model, they have a PlayStation 4 Pro 1 terabyte for $350 or $349.99. Again, this is GameStop. And just to go over some of the games, is they have games like The Evil Within 2 for $25, Wolfenstein 2, Injustice, and this is one of the reasons why I don't buy a whole lot of brand new games in the month of like August and September. And in October, I don't buy a whole lot of new games because a lot of these games, they end up being on sale Black Friday, and not necessarily meaning I'm going to go out Black Friday, but I'm just kind of like, it gives me more reason, I guess, just to wait before I buy a brand new game, because
and a lot of the sales, they do hang on. Like sometimes you don't necessarily have to go out on Friday; they'll last through the weekend. Sometimes they will still have some of the online deals. There are lots of options to not go out in the craziness, but a lot of game prices do drop significantly for games that lots of times are not that old, so you can find like a lot of really good deals out there, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and one game I do want to mention that's going to be for $19.99 that I cannot recommend enough is Dragon's Crown Pro on the PlayStation 4. I absolutely love Dragon's Crown on the PS3, and I'm like, I kind of might want to get this because that was a really fun game. That was really good. Didn't you play Dragon's Crown?
Yeah, definitely has, that old school, beat 'em up, like D&D feel. Definitely one of the better games like that. Like Code of Princess is one I thought I would really enjoy, but actually Dragon's Crown was the one to me, and they both have a lot of similarities with some of the art style, but I thought it really kind of achieved a bit more of what I really wanted. And I picked up the PlayStation version as well. It has a really cool like metal, I think they all come this way, but it has kind of like a little metal case. It's like embossed and raised up, it's one of those ones that people get mad if they like stuff to all fit evenly on their shelf because it's just not really going to do that. But it's definitely a good game. I like to see it get a re-release like that because it's just, I think it's a lot of people that probably missed out on it, and it's a game people should check out. If you're into that style of game.
I was gonna say they did re-release Code of Princess on the Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, I remember about that too. I mean, that's another one. Like I said, I just didn't. I was a little. It was cool when it came out, but it's like it was just like a tad bit disappointing. There was something about it. Dragon's Crown really kind of covered anything I thought Code of Princess was lacking. While both are just pretty cool games in that style, like so that kind of D&D beat 'em up. If you like that, I mean, both are good ones to check out. But definitely Dragon's Crown at $20 is a great deal.
Yep. And the last games I want to talk about This is going to be a $30 bracket. Games like Persona 5, Yakuza 0. Of course, we're going to mention that. I mean, that's going to be a game that if you listen to the show, you're going to have to play because we love some Yakuza. And
go buy some Yakuza.
Indeed. And the $15 brackets, games like the new Dishonored, Wolfenstein, The Old Blood. It's like 2 games in one. And then some of the $10 bracket would be games like, of course, like Last of Us. I mean, if you haven't played, if you're like the last person who hasn't played The Last of Us this year.
That's me.
Oh, you haven't played that? You haven't played Last
No.
of Us? Holy shit.
No.
Yeah, dude, it's only $10. You got to pick it up on PS4. You'd like it.
I've definitely been considering playing it. I think a friend even let me borrow it. He might have even given me a version, I think, on PS3, and I just never ended up playing it. But I have actually been thinking about that game more and more. And I heard some guys at work talking about wanting Last of Us 2.
Yeah,
and,
that's coming out.
So it is one I've heard great things about. I haven't heard anything bad. And it's it's one I do need to play. I think I'm really missing out missing out on that game.
Well, I put it this way. It plays very similar to Uncharted, which I know you're a big Uncharted fan. And I would say this is a game that I think your wife would like to watch. Because it's got a really good story. It's got a fantastic story. I would say the story is what makes the game more than the gameplay. But I think that would be
a nice bonus when when my wife likes, as I've mentioned before, games that have certain ones, she's really enjoyed watching. And a lot of times it has to do with the story and cool things like that. And that probably definitely is one I think she would dig.
The first 30 minutes, I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but the first 30 minutes of that game is just crazy. It just pulls all the heartstrings. So yeah, dude, you got to get that game. Definitely. Now, you were mentioning plug and plays earlier, and I thought that would be a good segue to talk about the PlayStation 1 Classic, which we talked about. I believe we talked about last episode. I think we did talk about didn't we talk about the games that were announced, like the 20 game titles they announced for it? I can't remember.
I think actually even at the time, I don't think they had announced the full list.
Okay.
I think they had mentioned maybe 5. Or I think that was the initial list. It was 5 or 10 games, and I know just recently, with it coming, the whole list had come out. So,
what did you think about the list?
I mean, it had some on there. I mean, I think, I really kind of think 30 games would have been a little bit more fair. It's one of those ones that the price range being at 100, it's just that's a little bit steeper.
Yeah,
some of the other plug and plays could pull that as far as the price, because a lot of them were still in a slightly lower range. When you hit 100, it's just that can make it. I mean, there's a big difference in 60 and 100 or 80 and 100. It just kind of changes a lot. And a lot of us have these games. We all have pies and we love them. We have PlayStation on there. There'll still be a lot of people that'll get these, and it does have some good titles on there. Tekken 3 is always awesome. Of course, Castlevania's not on there because that just had a release on its own.
Yeah.
That was kind of funny. Mr. Driller, I'm a huge fan of Mr. Driller, but it's I always kind of think of that as a Dreamcast game. I remember when I bought it, the chick at the cash register was like, "Oh, that's so cute." It's man, it's a puzzle game. It's good. It's okay. It is really cute too. But Mr. Drill is awesome. I mean, Puzzle Fighter does have some good stuff on there. But then I know for a lot of people it was, also kind of lacking.
Yeah, I thought the list was okay. I mean, when you have a big enough library like the PlayStation, I mean, it's impossible to put 20 or even 30 games on there that's going to satisfy everyone. Now, one of the things I did want to talk about is reviews are already out for it. It comes out December 4th, and they've already released reviews. People have already gotten advanced copies and made videos on it. And there was some interesting things about it. I mean, keep in mind, this is a $100 plug-and-play console with 20 PS1 classics, 2 controllers, no power supply, but it works off a micro USB. So, I mean, if you have... We all have micro USB cables and brick adapters from phones and whatnot and other electronics. But one of the interesting things is the fact that, one, The aspect ratio stays 4:3, which is like the standard aspect ratio. So, and there's no borders. So, if you're not a fan of like the black, wall things on the side, that might turn you off. Personally, I don't care about that. I mean, because I think a lot of those games that are 4:3, when you stretch them out, it looks kind of weird. There's no resolution change, which I thought it was a huge drawback, because even when you buy PlayStation 1 games on the PS3, like PSN, they upscale it a little bit. So some of the games like, say, Demolition Derby or Twisted Metal really haven't aged well. Like, it's got a lot of jaggedness to it that's very apparent when you're playing it on an HD television. I thought that was kind of weird. Also, one save state per game. So, I mean, there's been a lot of drawbacks that I'm just kind of like, oh, man, it feels really rushed, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I could see them, just wanting to get something like that out for the holiday season and going with what they could. It's like, as far as the game list, I know a lot of things have to do with rights and, things that just aren't gettable. Like I said, I think 10 more games just honestly would have made it a little bit more worthwhile. But, it's still one of those systems I think people will get. I think it'll still be a big seller, and that just means, we'll probably get another one. And maybe they'll be able to fix things out. And maybe they'll have some, borders, different saves. Maybe they can get some rights, for a few other games to come out on it. I have friends that didn't really have a PlayStation 1 when they were younger. And granted, a lot of PS2s could play those games, but sometimes people just might not have picked them up. So I think it could still introduce a lot of these games to people that maybe never played them. So I try to look at the good aspect of it. I'm still always going to like these, multi-systems and things like this. Really, no matter what's on them or what they do, I still think they're pretty damn neat.
Yeah, there's definitely an audience. And, if you're listening to the show, and this is a quick plug, if you're listening to the show and you're kind of like, I kind of want to get a PS1 Classic. I kind of missed out on the NES Classic or the SNES Classic. I love these plug-and-play consoles, but, I want something more inclusive, something that's going to have it all. Of course, we talk about the Raspberry Pi, and one of our good friends, John, the Retro Bro, he makes preloaded Raspberry Pis on RetroBroGaming.com, and he's also started a Patreon. And this Patreon it doesn't have a paywall or anything like that. It's more like, hey, if you like the work I'm doing, you can contribute and donate a little bit of something, because he's doing something that's really cool, and it's an alternative to Arcade Punks. And what Arcade Punks is a website that has pre-imaged SD cards for your Pi. So if you buy a Pi, you can go on Arcade Punks and you can download the SD image and put it on your SD card and go to town. Well, John's right now, he's been working on his own images. It's all custom made, and he's got a 64 gig SD card that is pretty freaking awesome. Matter of fact, I'm about to get one myself, and I know some other people that are going to be getting some. That I'm going to show it off. I'm going to do a stream and show off the image and everything like that to help them out. And I'll have a link on the description of this channel, or this episode, RetroBroGaming.com, and also his Patreon, in case, you want to throw a buck or two, help with the holidays, because, sharing is caring.
As always, I contributed to the Patreon myself. I just saw it last night, and I'd actually just dropped a few. I have a new car, so I'm adjusting to having a new car payment. So I was trying to change some bills around, and I had a couple Patreons I'd kind of knocked off, but I saw he did one, and it wasn't a huge amount, but I did a couple bucks, just like you can really pick like any amount. And, he's definitely a homie, so I was like, I got to support something like this, so. Yeah,
like I said, it's just a good alternative, if you're the kind of person that you don't want to do the whole freaking thing with getting the classic consoles, you don't have to do that. You can get something like the Pi. And the cool thing is, too, with RetroBroGaming.com is the Pi comes with instructions of how to add and take away ROMs. It also comes with just all sorts of things that that you want to figure out. And also, I mean, you can always message him too. He's really...
He's even done videos, just
Yes.
on how to do your own. He's very open with this. He gives you a chance to buy one preloaded. Some people, frown upon that. I don't see the issue. A lot of people want that. A lot of people, these games are just lost in limbo, and I think people should be able to play them. And he's definitely, a good guy who'll help you do your own, or you can just get one from him. So it's like you have lots of choices. A very helpful guy. If you get one and you have any questions, he's always very open to helping with, anything.
Indeed. And the last thing we're going to talk about before we take our break is kind of like sad news, but kind of news that we knew was coming. And that is Prima, a company that's best known for making strategy guides since I can remember. I don't know how long Prima's been around, but ever since I was a kid and I was buying strategy guides, it was either done by Prima or Bradley Games. And they're officially closing down in 2019. They're ceasing production. And, I mean, listen, like when Nintendo Power shut down back in 2000, I believe it was 2012, 2013, when Nintendo Power shut down. I mean, it was a really hard blow because it was the realization that, digital media is becoming more of a norm, and things like magazines and whatnot is starting to become a thing of the past. And that goes for strategy guides as well. I mean, what do you think about this, James?
The one hand, it's like a staple we've had for so long, and I oftentimes really didn't buy a whole lot of strategy guides. I did a bit earlier on, then I just kind of stopped because they were still always almost like an extra $20. Maybe you could save a few if you bought it with the game. But we had that thing called YouTube that came along to where when you get stuck, it's just kind of so easy. I don't know. It's not really that easy. It seems like it should be easier because sometimes you still have to like fast forward.
Yeah.
You have some asshole talking, trying to be funny. You don't want to hear. It's just like, shut up, man. It's like I'll usually just mute it, if I can. Some I've enjoyed more. Some have been more helpful. It's still always a pain. I mean, because I can always miss, flipping through a strategy guide to that one point, and I still have a few. I still last time I played Order of Ecclesia, our famed game we both suck at in the Castlevania series, I pulled out a strategy guide I had for that. I think I bought used because I will still collect them for certain games. If I see a Castlevania guide, I will pick that up. There's certain ones I'll still get, and I still love print. I still love magazines. I still try to go out and buy them, just actual books. I get it. The tablets and phones are easier, but nothing still beats, just flipping through some pages. For me, they do take up space, and I can see a lot of people try to be more, space conscious with just having less stuff. And people can do everything on their phones and tablets, but it's still cool to see because there's things you just can't replicate on those that you can get in books. As far as certain pictures, I'm really big into horror movie books that have lots of posters and artwork, and it's really nothing better than just actually looking at a physical book. Like looking at it on my phone, man, that wouldn't cut it. But that time kind of came, and I mean, you can find everything on YouTube as far as hints on games. So I'm really kind of surprised they held on this long at the end. And like I said, it's kind of sad, but who knows? Maybe they'll start making more. We've had a couple like Zelda guides that were done in like a hardback form. So I think we could still see some, but they will be, made to look fancier. Much how like albums and vinyl have come back as it's a bigger, nicer thing. And I think we might could see that with some strategy guides too as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll always have the art books. And for me, when I think about strategy guides, I dive more into nostalgia. And, I'm like, yeah, I remember, there was a time when I would buy a JRPG that I didn't feel like it was I got the whole thing until I got the JRPG with the strategy guide. It was just like a combo. I remember when I first got Final Fantasy VII, I bought it with the strategy guide at Babbage's, years ago. And, we got, like you said, we got YouTube. We have, websites like GameSpot. Of course, Game FAQs. That's been around for a very long time. That I still go on. I still go on Game FAQs.
love Game FAQs, man. That has been an awesome site forever.
I mean, I remember going on Game FAQs back when, we still had dial-up, and I was like sitting there waiting for the page to load to figure out a boss battle and stuff like that. I mean,
dude, I got all my stupid Game Shark N64 wrestling game codes from there. Like, we'd print off pages, and I would sit there with my stupid Game Shark for like an hour inputting these codes so I could have barbed wire on steel chairs. Like, it was just it was ridiculous, but it's like that's a site sometimes people can forget about, but it's like it has been there, and it's been providing a lot of stuff for all of us for a long time.
Yes, I mean, like, it's unfortunate. I'm not as upset as I was when Nintendo Power shut down. I was kind of like, oh man, this sucks. But with this, I'm kind of like more somber. I'm kind of like, it's unfortunate, but it's the sign of the times, and that's ultimately my comments on the strategy guides for Prima.
Yeah, and I'd say too, if you're one of those people that likes print media and magazines, I would say just support it as much as you can. Go to Barnes and Noble. I love bookstores. Still love books. It's always good to go there, and support those. And if you love print media, just buy it and support it. And it's gonna hang around in some form or another. And like I said, the art book, like you said, the art books. I think we might see some more just elegant looking strategy guides at points with special items and goodies and cloth fold out maps and crap which actually would be really cool. So
it would.
I think we could see a little bit of a change. We won't get the constant stream, but something better could come out of it.
Indeed. And what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to take a short break. We're going to listen to some cowboy music, yippee-ki-yay, because when we come back, we're going to be talking about some cowboy games to help celebrate the milestone in sales and anticipation of people enjoying Red Dead Redemption 2. We actually got some comments on the XSgaming Podcast group page of some of your favorite Western games. Some of them I've never played. Some of them I definitely want to talk about. So sit back, relax, guys, and we'll be right back. And we are back, guys, and yes, that was some good, the bad, and the ugly theme, which was recommended by James Gruesome. You told me, like, what? It was like one of the best songs ever?
It's really awesome. It's one of the most famous Western-related songs by Ennio Morricone. He did, lots of Western movies. I mean, he's even done Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight, which came out not too long ago. I think some of just the most famous Western movies, Clint Eastwood. That's how a lot of us, picture Westerns when we think of them. And it's really that classic sound. The famed Dollars trilogy, Fistful of Dollars, Few Dollars More, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Man with No Name, outstanding stuff. If you're digging Red Dead and you really haven't watched any Westerns, those are a great place to start. I think they're all pretty exciting. It's not your, John Wayne, hey, partner. They're a little bit more violent.
Yeah.
Just a little bit cooler. They're all Italian. Clint Eastwood went over there and really kind of made his name, and then came back, from there, and went on, of course, to all he's done now. So just a really cool music piece from a history that I really love and grew up with too.
Indeed, and I mean, like the thing that inspired the topic of this episode is, of course, Red Dead Redemption 2. Of course, this is the follow-up to Red Dead Redemption that came out 8 years ago, and this game has broken some crazy numbers. Now, the original Red Dead Redemption 8 years ago sold about 15 million copies, but it's a shockingly huge number. But if you've been keeping track, it may not be a big surprise. Just after the game's launch, the company revealed that it's made over 725 million in the first few days. It's the largest opening weekend of any entertainment property ever, according to Rockstar, and it happens to be the game's most anticipated title of this year. And it's not only that, but Take-Two also called out that Rockstar's Cowboy Epic is apparently the most pre-ordered full game ever sold on PlayStation Network, as well as the biggest day one sales of any digital PlayStation game. And I have not even played it yet. I still have. I know you got it.
Well, that's one of the things. This game was inspired by that. But as you said, you have not played it. I played it briefly, and as I started it, I was looking up some videos, it's like hints before you play, and I started getting really overwhelmed. I was like,
yeah.
Oh man, there's a lot of stuff. So I said, I need to stop watching this crap and just play it. And it did grab me right from the start, but I just kind of ended up not being in the mood to really delve into that. And also just as time, I just have not had as much time lately to play games. So I did, end up playing something else, which we'll talk about later in games we've been playing. But it still did, spawn this topic, which still covers a lot of games that, I've loved. And, I'm sure a lot of you guys have played too. It's been going on for a long time. It's like the Western has been I think a not quite overused topic. GTA, it hasn't really, ran its course, and it still always does really good. But when you think about the Red Dead games, with Red Dead Revolver starting out, it was a 6-year gap before Redemption. And Redemption was just, completely... it changed the game as far as Revolver, and we had Gun in the process, which I think kind of spawned the first Redemption, but it totally went past it, and then it was another 8 years for the sequel. So it's still a really cool franchise, I think, that has definitely not overstayed its welcome, and people definitely keep wanting more, because people have been waiting for this one for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, Gun, you don't have a whole lot of people that talk about Gun per se, but I mean, Gun was an open world cowboy game, where Red Dead Revolver, the game before Red Dead Redemption, wasn't, if I'm not mistaken, it's been years, but if I'm not mistaken, Red Dead Revolver was an open world. It was more like just an adventure game, right?
Yeah, you kind of had, it was more set up in stages.
Yeah.
It had a little bit, it kind of had a little bit more open world feel. You could still go into, areas, you could still buy things, but it was still just more of an action game as opposed to open world, whereas Gun really kind of was our first open world experience with those types. And I mean, that one was on PS2, Xbox, and GameCube. It was really big for its time, and it really set that off. I still kind of, Rockstar had that notoriety from GTA. So I think a lot of people played Red Dead Revolver due to that, but I don't really know how many people, really, loved it. I was a huge fan of it. Growing up, we watched a lot of Westerns in my house. Lone Ranger was big. I had this like bouncy horse with these metal coils that they do not make anymore because I'm sure they're very dangerous. And his name was Trigger. Yeah, after the Lone Ranger, Rifleman was very big. Grew up watching the Clint Eastwood westerns. And, to have Red Dead Revolver, which actually had a lot of throwbacks, even a movie, Django, not the Tarantino Django Unchained, but there was an old western called Django. It had Franco Nero, who was also in Enter the Ninja. He was another guy made his kind of name over in Italy doing those films. And there was a guy in the movie, Django, he dragged a coffin around. And there was a boss or a character in Revolver, that had a coffin. So it's like they paid attention to these movies, and they definitely did a lot of throwbacks to it, which drew me in. And it kind of, brought that Western, perspective kind of into prominence. And Gun really took on that. And they took more of that GTA mode and kind of made the game that, maybe Rockstar should have made in the first place.
Yeah.
It had that openness. It had the horses, I think it had some hunting. I remember scalping people, which was just, that was pretty cool. It had, I think Thomas Jane, Chris Christopherson actually had a lot of kind of big name guys doing the voices. And at this point in time, it does get overlooked. I mean, it was even on the PSP as well. It was. I think, it was really, acclaimed and played at the time, but I think it's just got kind of lost because by the time Red Dead Redemption came out, nobody thought about Gun. It was just kind of gone, but it really did spawn that whole open world Western game.
Yeah, and I think Gun also has the same problem that some of those games had that came out in 2005. Even the Yakuza series had the same issue that a lot of games that came out 2005 was right around the time that we were getting hyped for the 360 and PlayStation 3 and the Wii, and some of those games that come out later on in that console generation get kind of overlooked because naturally gamers get kind of hyped about the new consoles. And when I think, and I'm going to ask you this, James, but my answer is when I think of cowboy video games, the first game that I think about is a classic on the Apple II, and that is Oregon Trail. I think of Oregon Trail whenever I think of a cowboy game because that was just the epitome of the Western sort of gaming experience. More so, not so much of the outlaw aspect, cowboy, but more as in being in the West and going somewhere else and taking care of course, your supplies. And I would always name, my people after kids in my classroom. And I would always have that one kid that I didn't really care for that would just make him purposely die in Oregon Trail. I think all the kids freaking did that. And just the hunting rabbits and buffalo and stuff like that. And it was what made that game really special to it, and I think a lot of people can resonate growing up during that time, is it was the one game that you could play in school that wasn't totally educational per se, but it was I could play a video game at school and play this Oregon Trail. And James, when you think of cowboy video games, what's the first game that comes in your mind?
Probably, I would say the first one I could really remember playing would be, I might have played Gunsmoke in the arcade, but Wild Gunman on the NES really was the first kind of cowboy themed game I remember. Very cool with the light zapper. A lot of kids, when you got that, you either got the game or you rented it. We had Hogan's Alley and Duck Hunt and Wild Gunman. Which it was actually originally an arcade game as well, which I never played that version. But the NES, you had the zapper capability, and it's still a pretty damn fun game. That's the initial one. Gunsmoke, due to the time when it came out, and it's actually a game I didn't really play till later on in life. And it's very similar to Commando, but it's one that I could see also. As much as I think of Wild Gunman, I think people would think of Gunsmoke or Gun.Smoke, as it's kind of named for some reason that I don't really understand.
Yeah, I never understood why they add that period in. It's like gun smoke.
I wonder if it was a like a rights thing, because there,
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of old time radio, and the very first shows I listened to were Gunsmoke. It became a TV show later on, but William Conrad, who a lot of people maybe kind of know for like Jake and the Fat Man, if anybody remembers that show in the 80s, he was the Fat Man. But he actually, did the voice of Marshall Dillon. And Gunsmoke, for its time, you think when these shows came out on old-time radio, it was the early form of TV, before TV. And they were very violent and depressing, and somebody always got killed. But that was my first taste of old-time radio, and I've actually been a fan ever since. And as much as I like horror stuff, Gunsmoke is still the one show like I could always go back to. So I'm kind of wondering if that Gun.Smoke might have had something to do with like rights issues as far as the TV show and radio show.
Yeah, that sounds like it to a T. That's what I did a lot back in those days in the early stages of video games. I mean, like you think of like Dragon Warrior in Japan was called Dragon Quest, but the reason why it was never called Dragon Quest until Dragon Quest VIII was because of copyrights and Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. Also, another game that I really enjoyed that was a Western, and it's a little different. It's a little different than, say, like Oregon Trail or Red Dead Redemption, but it's a game I don't hear a whole lot of people talk about, and that's Dark Watch: Curse of the West. And what I liked about this game was it combined horror and the Western genre. You took the role of a vampire named, I think his name was Jericho Cross, who was hunting down supernatural beings. And since he was a vampire, he had an assortment of superpowers at his disposal. Based on his choices, he could gain abilities throughout the game. And when the sun came up, Jericho would actually lose his abilities and might have to fight as a normal human. There was supposed to be a sequel that never came out, and even a movie, but that never blossomed because the game's kind of underrated. I don't know if it sold too well or not, but that was a really fun first-person shooter that was on, like, I believe the PS2 and the original Xbox.
Yeah, I was looking at a couple lists, of games, prior when I was just trying to, like, refreshen up on some, and that one popped up, and that was one I didn't really remember playing. Like, I want to say maybe I might have had a Dark Watch game, I thought, on the 360, but now I'm thinking, I was like, maybe that wasn't, maybe it had a different title, because that was one that definitely slipped on. I remember reading about a vampire and a Western, and it's like, man, it's like, that one sounds
cool.
Kind of, it really sounded cool. I tell you a game I found a little bit later on in life, and I really wish I'd known about it. Just due to the fact, as I said, growing up as a kid, I was a big Lone Ranger fan. I actually had action figures of the Lone Ranger, which I was just looking up on eBay. I was like, man, I just wanted to, check them out, because like I still have my old ones, and I found them. It was some weird toy company that made them. It was based on the Legend of the Lone Ranger, which I don't know if that was a show. I don't know. As a kid in the 80s, we caught many, reruns of shows from many decades before. But there actually was a Lone Ranger game on the NES, and it was made by Konami, which, during that time, it's going to be good. And I didn't play it till, probably a decade or so ago, when I had a bunch of ROMs. And I played it, but it was a really cool mix of side-scrolling. You had overhead where you could go into town. You could buy items. Even had a little bit of first-person, kind of like maze. Kind of reminiscent, I'm sure, of like Golgo 13. But it was a game like I really wish I had known about as a kid, just because it had that Lone Ranger name. Like, I'm sure my mom probably would have been like more apt to like buy that for me,
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, like Lone Ranger, yeah, you could check that out. But that was a game I think it's like a lot of people forget about, and it's also kind of an odd property. I mean, with me being a kid at that time, being so into the Lone Ranger, it's like there just had to have been I don't really know what spawned that. Like I said, if there was, a current movie or anything like that, but it's one a lot of people I think would forget. Lone Ranger is a weird property. There was a movie not too long ago, which I didn't see. It had like Johnny Depp as Tonto, the Indian character in the show. And it's just one. It was a really cool property. It ended up being a really good game, and I think it's kind of a forgotten Konami classic in a sense.
Indeed. Another forgotten series that's actually going to be on the PlayStation 1 Classic, and it's a Western JRPG. Western is in like it kind of takes place after cowboys and stuff, and that is Wild Arms. It really stands out among this list because Wild Arms 3 is generally seen as a series highlight, but all the games are fun in their own right. And if you're a fan of like Western and JRPGs, it's definitely a game to check out. Just the opening itself is very, inspired by the good, bad, and the ugly kind of theme. It kind of has that whistling, sort of thing, and that was a really fun game. I enjoyed that. Now, I did ask the podcast group page some Western games, and I'm pulling that up right now because they got some pretty good games on the list. And while that's loading, another game that I want to talk about Western games is actually Western. The Western genre is how we got some kind of risque games like in the Atari 2600, like Custer's Revenge.
Oh, man.
I was just thinking about that. But okay, so the group page, XSgaming Podcast group page on Facebook. First one was from Black Metal Gamer Jason. He said, Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, classic arcade games like Wild Guns, Gunsmoke, Sunset Riders. Gun was not bad. It did the sandbox Western first, but Mad Dog McCree I used to play at the arcades all the time. I knew Mad Dog was going to be thrown in there. That's a fantastic game.
Mad Dog McCree, probably, I'm sure it is lost in the ether somewhere, but we had done a light gun game in the past, which probably means we can do another one in the future. But Mad Dog McCree, the laser games, the American laser games had a whole series, and it actually was brought back to life. Like last time they were forgotten. A big line from another game, Fast Draw Showdown with Wes Flowers, who actually was a real fast draw guy who starred in the game, and that was the famed deliveries in the rear line, which was always just brought up and was just hilarious because it was in the arcade. But all these games are really related, and they were brought back to life on the Wii. You could get Fast Draw Showdown on the Wii Shop, and actually with the PS3, a lot of these games were on PSN that you could use with the Move. I had them all on the Wii, but Mad Dog McCree had its own, 3-game set where you had Mad Dog McCree 1 and 2, and you had The Last Bounty Hunter. And, they're light gun games done with that live action, famous, Laserdisc style. A lot of them were on the 3DO as well. But the Wii, as far as having, you had that zapper aspect, like you had the gun, and it just really made it so much more fun to where that Wii was that, light gun game console.
It really was,
and
yeah.
Yeah, Mad Dog McCree, it was great. I think it was even like, it was probably even like $20. It might have been 30 like at most, but you got 3 games, just such classics, man. I can still remember those in the arcades at the mall, because I had friends that worked at the arcade, and just going there and playing, all these games. And it's like, it definitely had that just Western shootout feel to it. Just really brought so much of that stuff to life. And it was corny as hell, but damn, they were really fun.
Yeah, and also Jared, Folk Mill Gamer, he said Gunsmoke and Wild Guns are on the top of the list. The Super Famicom Great Battle 5 was a Western theme. Seeing Ultraman, Kamen Rider, and Gundam in cowboy hats were always amazing, which I had never heard about that game until probably about 1.5 years ago. Jason told me about that. He's like, man, you need to download this Super Famicom game on your Pi. And it's like, Great Battle 5. And I played it. And yeah, it's like a Western game, but you're playing as like Ultraman, and he's got like a cowboy hat and like a poncho. And it was just, that was a very weird game, but a lot of fun.
That one sounds like completely, insane. Wild Guns is one too we could talk about because, very popular as being an expensive Super NES game, but recently, it's been on the Switch. There's also on the PS3. They even did like a physical copy of it. I picked it up. I got one of the last copies in my town at the time, and it is a very fun game. And another one that reminds me of Wild Guns is one I found on through emulation and MAME was Blood Brothers.
Oh yeah,
kind of had that same feel as Wild Guns. You're kind of ducking behind objects, shooting out windows and outlaws, and it had the 2-player fun. And those were two. They both kind of just had that arcade, feel to them, and they were awesome games.
Yeah. Also, Kitcherukin also mentioned Great Battle 5 on the Super Famicom, and I guess that would be like one of the recommendations for you listeners. If you have a way to play Super Famicom, rather it's emulation or, if you have a Super Famicom, definitely check out Great Battle 5. Really, really good. Now, John the Retro Bro, he says, my favorite Western retro game is whatever I can play on my Pi, but seriously, Sunset Riders is probably my favorite, and it's one I've recently gotten into due to never owning a SNES as a kid, and of course Gunsmoke, as I cannot leave that one off the list. And yeah, I mean, Sunset Riders, that's like pretty much Contra meets Cowboys. That was a really fucking good game. Let's see, also Craig, he says Wild Arms, the most authentic, but it's one of my favorites. And Game Grinder, Josh, he said Red Dead 1 and 2, Sunset Riders, Wild Guns Reloaded, and don't know if they count, but I also include Oregon Trail, it counts for me, and Fallout New Vegas, which I still have never played Fallout New Vegas, but I know it's got a huge cult following, and it definitely takes place in the desert, definitely has that Western post steampunk, apocalyptic kind of vibe to it, so... Yeah.
Yeah, really, I was kind of excited because I was that one that always, I was drawn to Westerns. As a kid, even being a cowboy was something that was still like a job you thought you might have. As a kid, I don't really know if anybody still, thinks that nowadays. So, being into it, I was very into that. So I would always pick up, the games. I was a big fan of the Way of the Samurai 1 and 2, and Atlas put out another game called Samurai Western. And I mean, I have to say, I didn't like it as much. It didn't feel as open world. It was more set in stages, but it was kind of cool because you could do 2 players, and you had a samurai character and a cowboy. And the one guy had guns, one guy had a sword. And even as far back as the PS1, I was picking up a lot of the games. Gunfighter, the Legend of Jesse James, which I want to say that one was not GunCon compatible. It was a little bit like Time Crisis. They did make a sequel on the PS2, which I never played. And it definitely, had the GunCon 2 capability. And even Dead Man's Hand on Xbox. A lot of these games are kind of few and far between. It's like we haven't got a good list. A lot of people have mentioned a lot of games, but it's like it still was really never an overplayed genre, kind of like war games. Dead Man's Hand was a first-person game. Had a little bit of poker involved in it. You could stop and play, and it kind of gave way to games like Call of Juarez. Which is on the 360, and I didn't even know that series has like 4 games within it. Because I really haven't played it in quite a while. But it really kind of expanded on that first person version of those games, which we weren't seeing a lot of Westerns. So we had Gun come along, then Juarez kind of brought back that first person style. But it's still really not like an overplayed genre, which I think is really cool. I don't know if it's because people aren't as into cowboys and westerns, and it's just kind of like laid low, or what exactly it is. But I mean, and I have a good list of like 20 so games in front of me I've been reading from, but it's like that's still not a huge amount.
Yeah, it's weird, and I think what it is, it's like the cowboy genre is such. I mean, especially us in America, it's such an epitome thing of our history. I mean, that's the the stepping stones of America is like the West and the gold rush and stuff like that. And I think it's just something that we've just come so accustomed to that we don't even think about, cowboy video games because it's such a normal thing. And what really surprised me is when I was like, all right, we're going to do this as a topic, is I was like, it was almost like I was second guessing. I'm like, I don't know if this is going to be a topic that we'll be able to really, cover a whole lot in. And then it's like almost I didn't realize it because it's become such a normal thing. It's like, oh, it's Cowboys. It's like,
yeah,
it's a bread and butter thing of entertainment. It's like, wow.
You told me about it, and I was like super excited. I'm like, oh, dude, I'm like Cowboys stuff, like old time radio, like movies, like because like for me it was such a integral part of just my childhood, and like I said, I still wonder. Like I had a ton of trick or treaters come by. This is a post Halloween episode, and I don't see anybody dressed as cowboys. Like it just doesn't really. I saw a toilet that actually opened up with a lid in a bowl, and I threw a shitload of candy in it because that was fucking awesome.
That is cool.
But, not many, not any, cowboys, and it's one of those weird things. But with things like Red Dead, it's really cool to see that, and I think that can extend to other mediums, as far as like movies. As we mentioned, from the music, The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, the Man with No Name trilogy, Once Upon a Time in the West. Everybody should watch that. There's really a lot of old classic westerns, even Tombstone.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people of that. Unforgiven. Clint Eastwood, he came back and made another western. I actually saw that in the theater with my mom. We had the Young Guns. And you'll get little spurts of westerns coming back, and The Hateful Eight definitely had a western feel to it, and I really enjoyed that. It was lots of snow. It really made me think of the beginning of Red Dead Redemption 2. For everybody that's played that knows you all start out in the snow, and The Hateful Eight was a very cool movie. I always loved Quentin Tarantino movies, and I think with the popularity of Red Dead Redemption 2, we could see even some more western movies in the theater kind of making a bit of a comeback. You just you never know what this will spawn. People have really wanted this, whether it's the story in the game is so good, and you can also have the stories in the movies. So I'm just kind of looking forward to actually what this will bring for that western genre that just all in all, whether it's games, movies, it's not played out. I don't think anybody's tired of it. It's like people still want to see those movies and play these games.
Yeah, whenever there's big money, you're going to have spinoffs of other companies wanting to get in on that. And, Red Dead Redemption 2 broke a lot of records, rightfully so, and it's definitely going to do that. Now, we're getting close to time, so because I didn't realize, man, we could make 2 episodes talking about Westerners. But let's get into games we've been playing recently. And for me, I've been playing probably about 4 games, so I want to start off first because I haven't really played a whole lot. I got back into Yakuza Kiwami 2 because I just finished Fist North Star Lost Paradise, and I hadn't played Kiwami 2 since Hurricane Florence. It's been a long time, and I picked it back up, and that's what I love about that series. I picked it right back up, and I knew exactly what was going on, knew exactly what I was doing. I'm like, and it wasn't even like, I stopped at the beginning of a chapter. I was like in the middle of Kamurocho, and I'm like, okay, I need to do this. Okay, this is what's going on. So I've been playing that. I'm close to beating Save Me Mr. Taco or Taco. It's a little octopus game from Nikilas. Is a platformer, very reminiscent of the Game Boy years. It's on Steam and on the Nintendo Switch. And a really charming game. It's one of those games I've been playing while I'm at work on slow days. I just pull it out and play a stage or two, and I think I'm on stage 26 or so, and the story is actually getting pretty deep, pretty serious stuff going on between humans and octopuses. It's getting kind of crazy, but I've been playing that. Also, the arcade 1-up. I actually got the arcade 1-up Street Fighter 2 arcade cabinet. And made a review of that on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Skullion, for some of you folks who are listening on Podomac or on iTunes. I did a review of it. I enjoy it. Been playing a little bit of that with my nephew. He's 6, so he's never really grown up in the arcade, so it's nice seeing him playing some form of arcade action. And it's a perfect size for him, too. He can stand up. I sit in my nice chair and play with him and stuff. And last game I'm going to mention I've been playing is a game I'm going to be reviewing that's going to be on Steam Early Access on the 16th, and that is Badminton Warrior. It's a 2D platformer, and what makes this game really interesting is it plays almost like Mega Man Castlevania, but you're playing as this like generic like badminton guy. Like, he doesn't look anything special, but what makes the game really special is the fact that all the enemies shoot balls and badmintons at you, and you have to hit them back with your tennis racket. When I first played the game, I tried to hit people with my actual racket, and I kept dying, and I'm like, what's wrong with this game? And then I realized, I have to hit the ball back at them. So I'm planning on doing a review of that. I've been really enjoying it, but yeah, that's what I've been playing. What about you, James?
Yeah, my list has been pretty small. As I said, I'd got Red Dead 2, but I just wasn't really in the mood for it. And the Call of Cthulhu game came out, which I've been hearing about for a while. We had an original old Xbox game, Call of Cthulhu, which had a lot of insanity meters. Kind of seemed kind of reminiscent of that GameCube game. Do you know the name of it?
Eternal Darkness.
Yes, Eternal Darkness. A little bit of stuff like that into it. And we haven't really had any, Cthulhu-type games. Been hearing about it. Came out, so I picked it up. And it was really what I was looking for at the time. It's one I've told some other people about it. And it's not really for everybody. It has a lot of, talking right now and just finding things and walking around, which is just, I don't know, somehow I just needed that. But I've been enjoying it so far, and I'm thinking maybe it's going to have some more like sanity factors as I get further into it. I just haven't had the most time to play it lately, but it's kind of got me listening to some more like H.P. Lovecraft stories, which you can always find on YouTube. I kind of like that thing about games. Sometimes like I will delve in, if I'm playing a Western game, sometimes I'm watching more Western movies. So it's really fun when you get into something like that and you can just, delve more into it and, find more things. But, the Cthulhu is always a popular thing. There's slippers made from him and there's pop figures and all kinds of little neat things like that. But so far I am really liking the game, and like I said, I've had a hard time getting into some games lately. Right, I really just can't plan for more than a day or two. It's more me than the game. That's the problem. But this is one I've looked forward to. It's like when I get off work, it's like, I'm going to be able to pick that up and play it a little bit. And my wife was curious about it too, so maybe she'll check some of it out. But that's my short list. And I do want to throw on one more as far as the Western games, which is one we brought up in the past quite a bit on the 3DS. And I don't know if it's on the Switch now, but Gunman Clive.
Oh yeah.
It's I had to talk about that one. It's just such a fun, kind of a Mega Man-ish type game, but definitely has that Western vibe. They're very tough, but still, fun and rewarding, and it just has a really cool art style to it. And there's 2 of them, and they're both just, still awesome games to play.
Yeah, that was. It's funny you mentioned that because I meant to mention that myself because that was actually the first game I downloaded on the 3DS. I remember when I got my 3DS and we were doing the show because you and I got our 3DS around the same time, and I remember you were like, "Man, you need to check out this game called Gunman Clive. I think you'd really like it." And I remember playing it and I really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, I don't think it's ever went outside the 3DS. I'll have to do some research because, that's something that needs to be on the Switch. Like, I would totally I would rebuy it, definitely.
Yeah, it'd be a really good collection if they could put both of those out, even on like a physical form. I would pick that up, or even just download.
Yeah,
it's just really cool. It's like if you like a Western theme, you like Mega Man, it's just a awesome game. Like, I don't know the size of the team that made it. It's not like a huge game. It's very simple, but it's something with that art style, and it's such a fun game.
Indeed. And yes, guys, this concludes another episode of XSgaming Podcast. I do want to say happy Thanksgiving because of the way the scheduling is. We'll be recording right after Thanksgiving's over. So happy Thanksgiving, happy Turkey Day. I hope you guys enjoy time with your family. And also, if you guys enjoyed this podcast, be sure to leave a review, rather on Podomatic or on iTunes, just to help the show. And I'm excited to announce that XSgaming Podcast will be showing up on Spotify as well, and that's going to be happening very soon. And a quick shout out to, and a quick plug to, again, retrobro.com. Check that out in the description of the episode. And also check out the new podcast that I'm helping out with called Blast Podcasting with my good friend Anthony. The first episode is up, and of course it's talking about Castlevania, because you can't start a podcast without Castlevania. Hell, XSgaming Podcast started out with Castlevania, I believe. And yeah, check that out, all that stuff. Again, as always, guys, thank you for all support, and as always, happy gaming.
And also in Red Steel 2, which has a little bit of Austin Westernness to it. I like the Red Steel series. I love it a lot. But have a pleasant evening, everybody, and watch some Westerns and play some Western games. Just get all cowboyed up. It'll be great.
Yippee-ki-yay.
Motherfucker.